Hey everyone, welcome to another one of our live panels. This is a great one today. We have the topic of the future of ID verification, what's next? So I'm Nick Lambert, I'm the CEO of Doc, and as you can see, I'm going to be joined by two great guests. We'll kind of introduce them both in a short while, just to kind of outlay some structure of tonight's session. Tonight it's in the UK, but maybe it's the morning where you are. But what we're looking at today is a schedule, not as usual, about an hour long. We'll spend 40 to 45 minutes kind of doing a round table with pre-prepared questions and answers, and then we'll actually start to expand on some of those. So we'll hopefully start to explore some of the topics that are on your mind. We'd also invite people in the audience to add questions into Riverside, which is the web application that you're using to watch this panel. So if you can just pop them in there, that would be great. And Francisco, who is waiting in the wings, will collate those and we'll route them into our panelists towards the end of the session. Also, if you're in the audience and watching, maybe it would be great if you could drop in to the chat in there just to show a sign of life and just to let us know where you're listening from. That would be appreciated. Those that did sign up will be recording this session, and we will send the event out by email to you once the recording and obviously the editing process is complete. So no need to take extensive notes on this topic. And the topic itself today, like I say, is a really, really interesting one. We're, of course, biased being in this industry. But the ID verification industry is really a kind of a crossroads, I guess. It's facing lots of new challenges and lots of new opportunities. So it's a very, very exciting time in the market. We have government-issued digital identities that are coming out in different forms. It's potentially affecting how businesses make money in the space, and predetermined or well understood business models that they currently use to operate using physical documents. So this transition into digital is changing lots, not just the format of the ID themselves. And also then we have at the backdrop of that generative AI, and fraudsters are getting much smarter with synthetic identities. So there's a ton of stuff going on now. So this begs the question, which we asked at the start, which is, where is the ID verification industry heading? The two amazing guests that we have to help answer those questions. We have, go ladies first, we have Pinar Alpay, who's the Chief Product and Marketing Officer at Signicat. Thanks for coming on, Pinar. Great to see you again.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Great to have you. And Carlo Schupp, who's the Vice President of Technical Alliances at TrustBuilder. Carlo, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. Yep.
Our pleasure. Maybe you could do just some quick short intros before we get cracking into the questions. Pinar, could you start us off, please?
Yeah, of course. My name is Pinar Alpay, and I'm Chief Product and Marketing Officer at Signicat. And before Signicat, I worked at Worldpay FIS for 7 years, and even before that at Bain & Company, Barclaycard International, and I also ran my own business. And maybe like a few words on Signicat. Maybe parts of your audience don't know about our company. Please. We are a pan-European leader of digital identity solutions with a global reach. We are headquartered in Norway, but we have offices in 16 offices in 14 different countries. And our products cover the entire digital identity lifecycle, all the way from identity proofing to authentication, to high level of assurance, digital signatures, and also orchestration of the onboarding journeys for our customers that involve KYCs, or any automated workflow.
Very good. Thank you, Pinar. Carlo, could you do me the favor, please?
Yeah. I'm Carlo Schupp, and CTO and VP Technical Alliances at TrustBuilder. And technical alliances means for us, so working with other vendors in the industry, such as Doc and Signicat, to provide a solid solution to customers. And TrustBuilder is specialized in identity and access management, and that's also where I came from. So I used to be the lead partner for Deloitte across Europe, concerning security and privacy. And identity and access management is obviously one of the key elements to implement security. So that's my background, and I've been with a number of companies that do identity and access management. And one of the elements that we do provide in collaboration with companies such as Doc and Signicat is the registration of users using verified identity. So using a mechanism where we can verify the actual physical identity of a person, and then later on, when the user is registered, we start authenticating the user based on the records that we have. And so it's an interesting model. It is a model that is not used, of course, in enterprise identity and access management, but it is especially useful, of course, for the external identities, where the external identities can be suppliers, can be resellers, can be partners, can be customers, and customers can be consumers and professional customers.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you for that introduction to you both. We'll get straight into it then. So, you'll be more than well aware, as we all are, that this stuff has been coming for a while, but it seems to be kind of reaching this perfect storm, I guess, of lots of different things in the market all coming together. We have initiatives, legislative ones as well, eIDAS 2.0, which we've all been hearing about for some time, happening in Europe. Really, I think it's by September 26, I believe, nation states within the EU, or EU member states, I should say, are legally required to provide identity wallets to their citizens. We have MDLs in the US, much more fragmented over there, of course, with a federal system, but that really does seem to be picking up steam. There's many other things besides, but maybe you could kick us off, Pinar. How do you see these two initiatives really impacting the verification, the ID verification space from Signicat and your perspective?
Yeah, there's lots of initiatives. And in fact, just this week, I think it was this week or last week, we read in the news recently that Google Wallet's introduction of beta testing of digital passports at TSA checkpoints, right? Although they say in the news report that this does not replace physical passports and travelers should carry their passports with them, it's still a big move. And, we welcome all these new developments, including the sort of MDLs. In the case of the US initiatives, it looks like these are early stages and experimentation, a legal and technology framework that is needed to support the actual rollout and acceptance. In the case of EU and eIDAS 2, of course, this is already happening. There is a sort of legal framework that's been accepted, also by member states. And there are large scale pilots that are happening to create the use cases, and people are working actively on the technology infrastructure. And the aim of this is to deploy a national eID scheme in all EU member states, and secure the acceptance of these eIDs by the public and private sectors, so that this cross-border authorization can be enhanced. From my perspective, I think, and from Signicat's perspective, this is really exciting. It's a exciting new world with all these new use cases that we are seeing as an opportunity to support.
Yeah. And how are you seeing that from your side, Carlo? Much the same. And I also saw the stuff actually about Google and the kind of supporting the TSA. And it's interesting because they definitely take the approach of let's put the technology out there. And of course, the legislative part takes much longer and needs to catch up. But before you get into that, Carlo, how are you seeing the kind of impact of eIDAS and MDLs within your sphere?
Yeah, like Pinar said, so the most important thing about eIDAS, and so the European regulation for digital identity and its associated wallet, is the fact that it becomes a legal instrument. And indeed, countries have to implement a digital identity. And in Norway and in Belgium, where I'm coming from, we are already used to a digital identity, and we use that every day when we are doing bank transfers, but even logging in to a public website for patient records, we already use our digital identity. So we are used to that. But if we go south in Europe, in France, in Italy, even in Germany, that is certainly not the case. And so we always find it very strange when we deal with companies and institutions in that area of Europe. And so for us, EIDAS indeed extends what we already know in the northern part of Europe to the rest of Europe. And so EIDAS, on the one hand, creates this legal framework and the obligation for countries to support it. And secondly, it provides for interoperability so that one country understands the other. And so also, because of this standardization, companies will be more incentivized to actually use that and adopt it. And so it's a crucial evolution, and it was about to happen, but now it finally happens.
It felt like a long time coming, hasn't it? But I guess with all these things, all of a sudden they hit you in the face and they're right here, and you have to act. My next question is going to be about opportunities, and Carlo, I'll stay with you for this one. The opportunities that they present for you. But what I was thinking when you were answering was, you're already doing a lot of this work today. So you mentioned like in Belgium already using this, and in the UK actually we're probably similar to what it sounds like in Italy and stuff. This is not something that's baked into the UK average citizen's lifestyle today. Does that present an opportunity for you in terms of it's something that you're already used to doing in your personal life and at a business level within certain countries, and it's a case of rolling this forward into others? Or are these changes sufficiently different from the way that you're doing things today, where actually it is an opportunity, but there's quite a lot of work for you guys to do to make this work across the board?
Yeah, it's a good question. So as a vendor with a platform, we provide kind of a brokerage service. So we provide broking between different types of identities and different levels of doing identity verification. And it may be a digital ID, but it may also be passport based. But that is a market inefficiency. And of course, we as a vendor can exploit that market inefficiency for a while. Now with the EIDAS, that market inefficiency will gradually disappear. But on the other hand, we find new opportunities, because now companies begin to realize, hey, this is very interesting. And not only interesting, but also companies are getting subject to new types of regulations, such as NIS2 and DORA, which requires companies to really do their due diligence relative to their business partners and their suppliers, which is a big opportunity for us. And rather than building on a market inefficiency, now we can build on EIDAS and more standardization, but still provide the same services, but then with more, let's say, more recognition of these capabilities.
Yeah, it's interesting as well how a market regulation really pushes a sense of urgency like nothing else. Like a lot of the time there's maybe there has to be a revenue component for companies to change course and maybe adopt something new. But if also something is handed down at government level, it's also creates this great sense of urgency. And I guess that's what we're seeing here. How about you, Pinar, then on your side, in terms of the opportunities that you're seeing come out of EIDAS and any MDL activity? I know that's maybe more in the US side. I don't know if you're seeing that so much within the EU, but could you talk a little bit about the opportunities that you guys are seeing?
Yeah, many opportunities from our perspective. Firstly, it's a whole host of new business models. Carlo, as you say, of course, this is going to take out some of the inefficiency in the market. But in the first instance, we see quite a lot of, wallets, for example, popping up all over the place. And those wallets are not going to streamline on day one. So there's going to be need for broking between these wallets. And secondly, there's going to be, these wallets are going to need more than just identity data, with new use cases that are being employed here. That those new pieces of data will need to be added in a secure way and trusted way into these wallets. And then the relying parties, meaning our clients, will need to get this data securely out of these wallets. And thirdly, or so fourthly maybe, there's going to be new stuff that can be done with these wallets. For example, the digital signatures, for example. So there we see quite a lot of opportunity there, both in terms of new business models, new use cases being enabled, and also more countries in Europe becoming digitalized, right? For example, Carlo, you talked about this as well. There are EIDs and very digitalized nations in the Nordics, in the Benelux, but Germany, Spain, these are big countries, France, that are relatively not digitalized. So we see quite a lot of opportunity there in digitalization. And for our clients as well, there's a lot of opportunities. This is probably going to help them grow across borders faster. And it's going to create a lot of competition in the market at EU level. So I think overall, a lot of positive things to come from this.
Yeah. Thanks, Pinar. And do you see like business models changing? It's kind of fairly well accepted that you would, verify for X cents or X euro, whatever, for the different types of use case. Are you seeing those change or expecting those to change with digital forms of identity, or in fact, like maybe new jurisdictions coming on that maybe didn't use your service before, or even different use cases, maybe that even low assurance use cases that maybe are starting to appear? Do you anticipate any change in how you guys potentially make revenue from the market or generate revenue from the market?
I think the structure of the revenues probably is not going to change. It's going to be sort of kind of like a subscription type plus a transaction type service. Probably that's going to remain that way. And EU says that it should be free for the users, but there needs to be somebody who pays for it, and it's probably going to be the relying parties. And it is that way today as well. So I don't think there's going to be a big change in the business model and how we charge for things. But I see probably the transaction volumes will increase. And as you say, this is probably also going to go to low level of assurance as well. And you need to be able to identify the right level of assurance for the right use case and not overdo it, but then be able to step it up if needed for the right use case.
Yeah. Thank you, Pinar. What's your perspective there, Carlo, as well? Are you seeing different business models develop, or do you think the structure and the format will largely remain the same, but you might expect to see higher levels of business come in from different jurisdictions and different use cases?
Yes, but from a different perspective, in the sense that if you look at supplier management, what is happening typically with a company? They manage the identities of the suppliers with an account in their Active Directory. Fine, okay. But how many identities can you in the end manage? So if you have 1,000 suppliers with each a handful of people, then all of a sudden you're managing 12,000 external people. That may change and come and go with those suppliers. So it becomes very difficult to have that done centrally. And so they want to push that to the suppliers. But then, of course, what level of assurance do you have of these identities, these people? Are they indeed an employee? And are they still an employee and all those things? And so a verified identity then becomes important in order to push administration of these users as close to the end user as possible. That's true for suppliers. It's equally true for professional customers, corporate customers. It's equally true for distributors, for resellers, for whatever. And so the digital transformation is happening. And then they see, we need to know your customer. We need to know your business in a much more serious way. And because of the self-service ability, so to speak, we see the actual operating models change. And for us, in our model, so we make a difference between visitors and verified identities. And so we also apply different pricing. And so for us, it's a new opportunity because that's a way that we can differentiate versus the other players in the industry. So it is a huge opportunity for us. Yeah. Absolutely.
The hard part then with any new technology is is working with it, of course, and being able to work with these new types of identities, these new types of wallets. What challenges are you guys seeing there? I mean, I know some of the IDAS, like some of the standards and things are not entirely clear yet for everyone. How are you guys finding the challenge? If I go to you, Carlo, first, is how easy or difficult have you found thus far preparing to technically be able to verify these identities and to be able to work with them? Have you seen a lot of challenge there, and are you anticipating a lot of difficulties moving forward?
Well, the difficulties are the market inefficiencies that we resolve as a platform, and that's what we offer to our customers. And so any technical challenge is fine. It's more the legal challenge that is there, and also things like GDPR. What type of data do you keep, and then you become responsible for it. And so, things like selective disclosure, like data minimization, that are techniques that we apply based on those identities. Those identities may come from different sources, and so we have digital identities issued by the government, but there are also these notions about decentralized identity and self-sovereign identity. We are also experimenting with solid pods. And people say, but what do we need to do with that? Well, we say, for the moment, we don't take any position. My personal belief is that decentralized identity or the self-sovereign identity will disappear because of this type of initiatives. They will become irrelevant. Even though a lot of effort is being made in that area by OpenID, by W3C, by a number of initiatives. But personally, and even blockchain, but the value will be limited.
I'm sorry, could you go over again, Carlo, why you think that would, you see that disappearing, the kind of decentralized identity? Why would you see that being not successful in the marketplace?
The decentralized identity as being self-sovereign, where a person manages his own wallet and he chooses his own technology and in his own hosting provider. And we see that there are so many interoperability issues that it doesn't work. But also, so interoperability in terms of technical APIs, as well as in data representation, but also the semantics of the data. What does it actually mean? And so you need an ecosystem where these things are being defined. But that is against the self-sovereignty. And so it is kind of, a paradox. And so, I want to be in total control of my identity. But the others need to understand your identity. Okay. And so in practice, it doesn't work. Within a limited ecosystem and a single technology, that may work. But that is not decentralized. No, that is centralized again.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I wonder if the phrasing of decentralized in that term is off-putting, because sometimes like decentralized could be that there is a centralized issuing entity like a government, and actually the individuals are holding wallets that they have their own custody over. So they control, not to get too technical, but they can ultimately control the access to that wallet, what's in it, and nobody else can go and look inside that wallet unless they
that's what EI does in fact is.
Exactly. So I would still see that maybe as decentralized in terms of it's about where that data is consumed. Like, so if I'm as an individual holding that data in a wallet I have custody over, and I'm sending a presentation to a verifier relying party, and they're able to verify that without necessarily that information being passed back to the issuer, I'm kind of seeing that as a decentralized identity. But I don't know, Pinar.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Nick. I think the way I see it is it's all about the control of the user, and the user decides what kind of data is being released and what kind of data doesn't get released. And that's the whole point of EU Digital Identity Wallet and the sort of self-sovereign identity that's being talked about right now. And the architecture is being written in such a way that gives the individual the control. And then also the parties that supply the data don't know where the data is going to and what purpose it is being used for. And I think that is, I think, going to stay where it is.
That's absolutely correct. So it is control over who you are sharing with. the data. It's not control of the data itself, but it is who can use this data.
Yes, and it will be up to the wallet providers and also the EIDVs like Signicat to ensure that control remains with the user.
Yeah. How do you guys prepare? Maybe this is a kind of a question along similar lines, kind of opening up to you, Pinar. How are you guys preparing for the rollout of these technologies? And I know could be a very long answer, but what are the types of steps that you guys are taking? I'm sure there's technical aspects, but maybe there's operational ones, if you can tell us about those as well.
Absolutely. I can speak for Signicat. We are fully involved in a leading role in the EU Digital Identity Wallet initiatives. As you know, at the moment, there are 4 large-scale pilots, and Signicat is in a leading role of 2 of those large-scale pilot consortiums. These are formed by both governmental and industry organizations, and there's EU funding for that. And they're going to be they have been ongoing for a while, and they're going to, I think, finish with extensions next year, maybe around September time. And within these pilots, the focus use cases range from card, account payments to travel, organizational identities, healthcare, driver's license, and even we are even considering to be there are some new pilots that are happening, being launched as well. So we are considering being part of one as well. But, as I said, Signicat's part of the Nordic Baltic EID projects and also the EWC, which is EU DI Wallet Consortium. And our role there is to shape how the wallets should be on a technical, technological, and regulatory level, and also to define those use cases. And we've already made quite a lot of progress. We have already since the beginning of this year, we have 2 proof of concepts that we have done. One of them was a technical proof of concept to read the data from the wallet issued by the Finnish government. And another one is another technical proof of concept to issue credentials into an iGrant wallet. And these credentials were hard-coded, not coming from an external resources. But there's a lot of work going on already to get ready within Signicat, and also to empower the different entities that are already within the ecosystem.
Yeah. What kind of scale, if you don't mind me asking, Pinar, what kind of scale in terms of maybe a number of wallet users are part of these consortia and these trials? Are you able to kind of illustrate? Because they seem like a really useful thing to do. Obviously, figure out something at a kind of smaller scale to then obviously see the impact as it gets to kind of nation states size scale. What size
these are very small, they are just technical at this point in time, just technical proof of concepts. But soon we will of course be trialing them with real users.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And Carlo, over your side, in terms of kind of prep for all this stuff coming through, I think that if you're a qualifying trust provider within the EU, I think everything needs to be up and running also by September 26th, so 2 years' time. How has your preparations been?
In my role as head of technical alliances, so we want to work with companies like DOC and like Signicat to exactly work with vendors that are participating, potentially in the large scale pilots, indeed, that are developing these wallets, and then we want to use those wallets. And embrace them and use them inside our platform in order to provide identity and access management to our customers. So we are not directly involved in those pilots, but we are involved with quite a number of the vendors that are involved. And we are currently focusing on quite a number of interesting use cases. Use cases in HR service providers, in rental service providers, and so in not only in finance and in healthcare, but really in completely different domains where the same questions pop up now.
Yeah, some of the workforce use cases are very interesting as well, because I think when a lot of us start work, you tend to seem to be giving your name and details to like, 10 different peoples in the same organization. And I guess like the employee passport stuff, these are some really fantastic use cases. Is it that type of thing that you're focusing in on?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so one of the use cases indeed, a person wants to apply for certain vacancies, and he or she needs to supply over and over again their identity, but also potentially diplomas, certain attestations, driver's license, salary slips, or whatever. I mean, and over and over and over again. But after a while, you lose control. Who has what information?
Yeah.
And so you want to apply then things like data minimization and control over data sharing and all those things. And that's exactly what we then want to supply to our customers. Yeah.
Good. Very good. Wallets are like a big part of this. Like we all know, we've kind of talked about that a little bit already. Do you anticipate, I mean, we can talk about kind of smaller scale pilots and these, I guess, not to be unkind, but kind of baby steps towards really understanding how this is going to work. But as we start to see like a number of wallets in the market, and we could probably debate as to whether we'll see 27 EU wallets in the market in September 26. I've got my doubts you'd see that many, but that's supposed to be what's happening. Do you anticipate having all these different wallets on the market? Is that going to make your guys' life harder, would you say? Over to you, maybe Carlo first. Do you think that's going to cause you problems?
Well, that is part of the market inefficiency, even though a number of things will become standardized and interoperable. You may still be confronted with the fact that you need to connect to different systems and different wallets, hence different technologies. But that's exactly our position. That is our role in the industry. That is broking between those technologies. So for us, it's an opportunity. For the customers, though, at first glance, they will be dazzled and what is this? And what do we need to support? And then we say, we will take care of it.
Yeah.
Pinar, please jump in as well. Like, how are you guys seeing that? I mean, with all these wallets, and I'll chuck another hand grenade into the conversation as well. Like, you talked about Google as well at the start, and obviously Apple Wallet being around the space as well. Like, do you think it's a foregone conclusion, as we often talk about, that these types of players are going to win the kind of main war in terms of the everyday use? People are going to use Apple and Google because the UX is just so good. And do you think all these other government wallets are going to be accessing niche government services and other things? How do you see that all playing out? And I know that's a difficult question. Sorry for slinging it at you, but what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, there were a few questions in there, but
the
first part of the question, there will probably be a lot of wallets in the first instance before the inefficiency or before they converge, maybe. And that's exactly what we are gearing up to do in the market, basically to broker between these wallets, make sure that they work together and that the data between them flows if needed. And in terms of Apple and Google's wallets, I was actually looking, and ChatGPT told me that Google Wallet has about, or Google Pay, let's put it that way, 150 million global users. And Apple Pay has 500 million users globally. So these are huge numbers. But I think that they will need to build trust in Europe. It's one thing doing your payments with your Apple Pay and Google Pay. It's another thing to trust them with all of your private information, your diploma, your insurance, mortgage, all these types of different use cases that may be enabled through an EU digital identity wallet. And building that trust may take time. For example, in some of the sort of clients that we are seeing, they want their data to stay in the EU. They want some of them want their information only handled by EU companies. So I think there's a Definitely Apple and Google will be really sort of very strong contenders, but they will need to play within the rules of the EU and as directed by EIDAS 2, and that may take some time. And in terms of building trust, we know that users are already shy with their information, especially in countries like Germany or, I think even in the UK, right? So people don't really trust the sort of digital EIDs or digital environment. So that absolutely needs to be established, and the use cases needs to be so appealing that people will be trusting the process.
Yeah, very good point. I also wonder, I think sometimes we've seen across Europe as we've been working with different companies that it's almost political in a way. If people that trust their government seem to be quite trusting of the identity, and you have kind of Nordic regions that are very well down the road of using these types of services and they trust their government to run them. The UK is very untrusting, like you said, of any national identity schemes and always has been. So it sometimes seems to be almost like political in terms of how people trust their governments, and that seems to shape the way they use technology. I also wonder if looking at like Apple and Google, personally I'd probably be inclined to trust Apple first, just because their business model is not necessarily based right now, at least, around advertising and kind of selling basically of data.
Monetizing the user.
Exactly. I mean, it sells hardware and it's starting to obviously get into other services. So maybe that is one to watch, but they tend to have a better record for me, at least of, resisting, obviously people trying to unlock iPhones over the years to divulge information. And at least the stories I remember, they've been resistant to that. Whereas you never hear of that with Google. So you kind of think, well, so I'd probably be slightly more trusting of them. But Carlo, what do you think about all that? What's your perspective on large tech companies entering the wallet market? Do you think it's, like Pinar said, it's a case of them just adhering to standards, and then it's a kind of runaway victory?
Well, first of all, if you look at an iPhone or a Google Pixel, these are devices that are just carrying the data at that moment, bearing the data. So, and they're just, a storage device. Huh? And if you look at an Apple Wallet, for example, it stores that data on your iPhone, but it remains under control of the user. Even though it may be backed up in the cloud of Apple, it remains under control of the user. And that provides sovereignty. And even from a European perspective, it still provides sovereignty because you're in total control of your data. And even if Apple is subpoenaed by the American government, or even if they leak things, it still remains encrypted, and so nobody can do anything with it. And so if you look at it from that perspective, it's just a storage device, fine. What Apple and Google may do is provide some SDKs in order to access it more in a more standardized way. So that in your mobile apps you can use it. But other than that, I don't think that it will be market shifting. Other than what Pinar just said, is that if you want to collect data and trust your issuers, like the diplomas, then you're not going to an American vendor, indeed, from a European perspective then. Then you want to have it managed by a local company, part of the local jurisdiction.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I agree. And I guess the one kind of caveat to that, which I don't want to get into the weeds on too much, is if you're asked to do backups of your wallet, where does that go? Like, so it's on the device, but then you back up presumably, or you want to sync it across devices. At that point, it's going into a cloud somewhere. And how is it being managed in the cloud, I guess, as well as the uncertainty. But it's hard to know, isn't it? Who to really trust there. Shifting gears slightly then into, like, I don't know if you guys have gone to EIC before. I'm sure you probably have, but Kuppinger Cole, the kind of analyst firm that's been operating for many years now, really is very, very bullish on decentralized identity technology specifically. And they see it, Martin Kuppinger, kind of lead analyst at that firm is, I mean, I think at this year's EIC, it almost felt like a decentralized identity conference rather than a kind of European cloud conference. But he sees it as being the kind of biggest disruption, talking about decentralized identity in decades. Gartner's also came out with a report fairly recently that saying the transition to decentralized identity is underway. Are you as bullish as Martin Kuppinger is? Do you see it having as big an impact? And Carlo, can I direct that one to you first?
Well, it all depends on how you define decentralized
identity. That's true. I should have done that before I passed you the question, right?
Yeah, exactly. So decentralized for me means so control is decentralized.
Yeah.
And but decentralized control means that nobody else. So it creates a problem for the relying parties.
Yeah.
If I control my data and I define the format of that data and how you access it, because I choose that technology and I choose where it is hosted, then yeah, you create a problem for the relying party. So for example, if I'm applying for a job and I need to present a diploma, but I choose the format of that diploma and how the diploma is interpreted, yeah, then the person evaluating my candidacy says, yeah, what is this? And then you need a human being or you need some AI to interpret that. And so decentralized control is, in my opinion, against what companies need or what institutions need. Decentralized hosting of your identity and your wallet, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, you can have your Apple wallet, fine. And decentralized use and all that, that's all fine. But I would be very, very cautious about really decentralized control. It doesn't work. And I've had many discussions with Martin on that subject, where he says, yeah, Carlo, you agree, but yeah, it's still a big thing because there are many standards, like I said, OpenID and W3C and Solid, and they're all working on that. But if you look in practice, it becomes so difficult. If you go beyond a very limited closed group, within a closed group it works. But then again, the closed group is then doing the control. So.
Yeah, it strikes me during this conversation. I think someone put up a post. I think it was Nick Riss that used to be at Evernym, but he put up a post about terminology is so crucial in this industry as it is in many. And it's so easy. Like, I think sometimes we can almost mean the same thing or talk across each other, and we actually almost mean, I think we're all of a common understanding, but it's so important that when we use these broad terms that everyone sometimes has a different understanding, which I think is become evident here as well. But I appreciate the insights there, Carlo. Do you have any thoughts about that? So we're talking about decentralized identity from a perspective of the individual controlling access to a wallet, maybe on their own device. How are you seeing that as a significant shift? One of the biggest things to happen in the kind of last 10 years, Pinar, that you've come across?
Yeah, I think this is a big claim. It certainly is a disruption, in my opinion. If we have the individual more in control of the data they share, then absolutely, this is basically technically possible. Individuals will then start to trust digital transactions more. This in turn creates more use cases. It will make digital transactions much more convenient for the users, better user experience overall, much better for the digital economy as a whole. So absolutely, I think it's an important trend. Would I think it's the most important disruption? I don't know. I think we sort of looking at it from a technological perspective, I see AI, Gen AI becoming a lot of a bigger disruption in the identity space.
Yeah. Let's shift into that then, because it's kind of one of the last points to touch on then. I noticed that Signicat, Francisco noticed, because he does all the prep for this and tries to make me look good, but which is obviously a difficult job. But he noticed you guys have published a report. I think one of the key things that came out of that report, Pinar, was it mentioned over a third of fraud attempts targeting financial institutions now use AI. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the impact that you see AI having? I guess it's going to have a good and bad impact, though.
I will, absolutely. And thanks for noticing, Francisco and Nick. There are really interesting insights coming out of our battle against AI-driven fraud research. And I really love to talk about it. We worked with Consult Hyperion to survey more than 1,200 fraud decision makers in the banking, financial services, and insurance and payment sectors. We're in 7 different countries in Europe. And we also combine this with data from Signicat, because as you know, Signicat also has its own proprietary eIDV products that are machine learning powered. So we are able to sort of, get a lot of insights into how fraud is evolving. And within that, especially identity fraud, and within identity fraud, how is AI-driven identity fraud evolving? So we looking at all that data, I truly believe, and what we have seen is that we are at an inflection point. We have seen, like in the last 2 years, AI driving a lot of efficiencies for a lot of companies and the economy as a whole. But in the hands of bad actors, we see that this actually is also turning into unprecedented levels of fraud, and at scale as well, in the hands of criminals. And some of the data that maybe I can talk about here, on average, respondents in our study estimated that 42.5% of fraud attempts detected the use of AI. And for some respondents, this was even higher. And 1 in 9 said that they estimated AI usage in fraud attempts can be as high as 70% in their organization. And what we have found as Signicat in our own data, 6.5% of fraud attempts that we catch are now deepfakes. And this is actually a more than 2,000% increase in the last 3 years, from 3 years ago. And what we also see is also the sophistication in these fraud attempts, especially in the deepfakes, much more increase in type, for example, injection type attacks. And in terms of impact, our respondents said 38% of fraud-related revenue losses are now due to AI. And as you said, Nick, people are actually confused about the extent and the exact nature of this impact and how to prevent it.
Yeah, really interesting. Well, on your side, Carlo, I mean, are you guys seeing similar things? And I guess as well, AI is often, sometimes fairly, but often it's all the bad stuff that you hear. But there's some good stuff as well. Surely AI can be used for detection of fraud as well. But what's your perspective on AI and the impact it's having in the verification space?
Yeah, like Pinar said, Gen AI is a big threat because of indeed all kinds of false identities, and it becomes a factory in its or an industry in its own right that is creating false identities with thousands, if not millions, with all fake faces and fake whatever, and even videos, and so liveness checking becomes also challenging. But there are indeed mechanisms to counter that with machine learning, and so the techniques that are being used to commit fraud are also the techniques, or similar techniques, are being used to detect it and to handle them in an automatic way. And so machine learning is in that respect extremely interesting, that you see certain patterns and immediately you will block all similar patterns. For example, if you see a face more than once coming up for different identities, then you know, this has been generated or has been recuperated for false identities. As a simple example, but so machine learning is important for detection, but also for handling and blocking those things immediately. Later on, also for recovery, is that you have to understand how big was the fraud now. If all of a sudden there is an attack and that went undetected. It is a challenge, but it's the eternal conflict between the thief and the police, and that.
Exactly, like you have to be 2-3 steps ahead of the criminals all the time. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Yes, an absolute arms race, isn't it? I think we've covered a whole bunch of stuff, which has been really interesting. Obviously, I was actually just scrolling back there just to almost try and figure out what did we ask at the start again. And I think it really was around all of the stuff that you guys are getting chucked at and dealing with in the ID verification industry, and really trying to get a sense of where it's heading. And obviously, as we can hear, there's so much going on, legislative, technology, users, trying to work with different use cases and jurisdictions. So it's a highly complex landscape. So it's really been great just to kind of start picking through it with you. We did have a couple of questions come in as well, which is great. Someone called Doctor, maybe they're a doctor, maybe they're not, but question specifically for you, Pinar. The question is, can Pinar talk about the degree to which the pilots, I guess the kind of EU pilots that we talked about, are addressing under 18s in use cases such as social media, gaming, streaming platforms? So obviously age verification is huge. I think there was some news out today that I think Meta are starting to look at teen accounts, was something I'd seen today. That's coming out, yes. And I think the question's kind of related to that. So yeah, can you talk about the degree to which these pilots are addressing under 18s, or if they're addressing this kind of age verification of under 18s within social media? Is that a use case that's being addressed in any of the pilots you guys are involved in?
That's a very good question. And in fact, I recently read that in Australia, the government is going to put very, very strict controls on social media use on youngsters. But I can at least speak about the two pilots that we are involved in. And social media isn't part of those. So the use cases are maybe card and account payments, travel, organizational identities, healthcare, driver's licenses, mobility. So social media isn't part of it, but it should be. And it should be with them, I think as you sort of put this kind of data into the wallets, of course, checking for age is not going to be a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, sorry, please go ahead, Carlo.
Yeah. But the thing is that, there is adult entertainment, there is the gaming industry where you need to be an adult and before you can do things. And you typically want to remain anonymous, or at least you don't want to reveal your real identity. And so we now have this type of solution, so where you can remain anonymous but still prove that you're an adult. Conversely, if you're a minor, that you can prove that your parent has given consent for a particular activity. And indeed, that is, and like Pinar said, so Australia is there indeed heading the rest of the world, but it is coming, and solutions are indeed now coming, such as
exactly. I mean, we don't have to wait for the wallets in order to put those solutions in place, and we have solutions as Signicat, for example, to do age verification. In social media as well as gaming, for example. We have many regulated gaming customers that, put age verification in place, and it is possible to do.
Yeah. Social media feels like such a soft target though, because I mean, you self-certify your age. So like, it seems I was wondering today when I was reading the stuff, and Yoti who are involved in that, I mean, those guys are everywhere. They seem to be being really successful. But of course, if you go into any of these accounts, it's not like restricted. I don't have to prove I'm over to access. I create an account with, I know a date of birth that says I'm 25 and I'm in, and it's like all of that other stuff kind of falls by the wayside. Fair enough, it might come into play if you've already created an account and you've said your correct age, or you've maybe not said you're over 18. Then at that point, those types of age proof things will start to maybe take effect. But and I liked what you're saying, Carlo, I guess, about kind of maybe using zero knowledge proof type technology to prove you are something without revealing much more about yourself. Yeah, it's very, very
And
powerful.
that's where self-stored identity, as I understand it, comes into play.
Yeah.
You can reveal your age, but you don't have to reveal your identity or sort of your name, for example. You just basically reveal the information that's absolutely needed for you to transact or interact with that platform.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay, Carlo, we have a question for you. It's I guess several people have asked it, so it's a popular one. I think you mentioned before, and I probably should have caught it at the time, Carlo, you mentioned about Solid Pods. And Solid, I think, is the Tim Berners-Lee kind of project. And I think Solid Pods are some kind of personal data store, but it's been a while since I've looked at that project. But could you clarify, like, am I correct? Is that the same project? And what are, like, Solid Pods? Could you maybe define those for the audience, please?
Yeah, so solid pot is basically a specification. So it is not a wallet as such. It is a specification of APIs and how to access certain data. And it's especially a standard around linked data. So that means that you can create a wallet according to the solid specifications with the APIs, and you don't store the data inside the wallet, but you link data. And so from the wallet on, you can go to link data, which is an interesting concept. And then you can either share the link or not with others. So, and then you dive into the practical use cases. So imagine, going back to you're applying for a job and you're showing your diploma, and your diploma is a linked data object. And so all of a sudden I break the link. Okay, so the employer was counting on your diploma, and now all of a sudden the link has gone. Okay, so the employer no longer has access to your diploma. So yeah, they cannot afford it because they need to prove and in their due diligence that indeed you had that diploma when you're working for them. And so what does the employer need to do? Yeah, they need to copy your diploma. And then you think, okay, so they're copying it. So why do I have linked data in the first place? And then you see that even though the concepts are indeed pretty novel, and that was the idea of Internet 2.0, but in practice it doesn't work. And so solid pot, on the one hand, is specifications, and so there are these practical problems in terms of interpretation, in terms of data persistence. There is also the fact that every vendor that works with SolidPod has different way of managing things, and they only accept pods of their own that they've hosted themselves, and you cannot use pods that are hosted somewhere else. And so this whole idea of decentralized positioning of those wallets has gone completely in practice. So it doesn't work. And it's due to the vendors, but also due to the specification and the standards that is incomplete and certainly not covering what you need from that perspective.
Yeah, very interesting. I need to read more up on that, but thanks for kind of giving us some of the inside track there. Final question then, something that we're actually seeing a little bit, so it's a kind of topical question that's come along. A big thing that companies verifying data face is like having lots and lots of, false positives. So you can have multiple different entries for an individual that could be the same person, but you're not quite sure if they are or not. And it's obviously a kind of huge efficiency issue within the industry. It kind of gets referred to as things like entity or customer resolution. Do you see any interesting technologies that are coming along that are going to impact kind of dealing with those false positives? And that question was from Richard. And any one of you can pick that up.
So what we do is if assuming that it is verified identity, but you want to have that identity for different types of purposes. For example, I may be somewhere an employee, but I may also be a customer of that same company. And so we invented that concept of a persona, where you said, well, depending on the persona that you want to assume at a certain point in time, you use different identities. And those different identities may even have different names or whatever, but they belong to the same person, the same physical individual. And by combining it as such, so we do identity resolution that is engaging the end user. And in practice, it does work. I'm not saying that it's fail-safe, but it does work for many of the use cases. And fraudulent use cases are easily detected at that moment.
Very good. Yeah, it all ties back to one account. Do you have any thoughts on that, Pinar? Is that something that you're involved in?
Yeah, I was thinking about the false positives, right? That's a direct impact to the top line of the merchants when you get false positives. And it's important to be able to make sure that you let the good actors in and the bad actors out. And I think there are quite a lot of technologies there in terms of early risk assessment, where you look at the risk profile of the velocity checks or geolocation or behavioral analytics, device analytics, IP analytics that you can use to triangulate, and then let the sort of good or sort of lower risk profiles of creating a sort of risk profile of that transaction or the user, and letting them go without much challenge. And then if you sort of detect a certain level of risk, stepping up the security so that you can introduce more challenges to verify the identity of that person. So it all has to do with the risk appetite of the merchant. Yeah. And if they set it low, then they are going to have a lot of false positives.
Yeah, just that trade-off, really.
It's that trade-off, yeah. And creating a picture of the profile of the transaction, and creating a sort of a risk analysis so that you can make the decisions.
Very good. Well, we're all out of time. I do very much appreciate both. You just kind of slipped over a little bit. So I know your time is precious and we very, very much appreciate it. So I won't take liberties, but I wanted to thank you very much, Pinar Alpay from Signicat. You're the Chief Product Officer, Marketing Officer there. And also Carlo Schupp, who's TrustBuilder's VP of Technical Alliances, and also the former CTO. I should have mentioned that. But I appreciate you very much both coming on. Loads of great insights there. And thanks again for your time. It's been really good fun speaking to you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, bye-bye.